So, first of all, I thought we would just introduce, or rather, get Mohammed and Sean to introduce themselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mohammed. I am a mentor with Look, and I'm 18 years old, studying at the University of the West of England in Bristol, a degree in education.
Great, thank you very much. And Sean, could you do us a short introduction as well?
Of course. Good evening, everyone. I recognise some of you from my job, of course. I am one of the teachers at New College Worcester. I teach IT and access technology. I am in my 30s, which makes me feel old, thanks to Mohammed being so young and fresh-faced. And I am here partly as my role as a dad of a child myself, as more as a blind dad, I suppose, because I've got a sighted daughter. So I've got experience of both being a blind child and being a blind parent.
Great, thank you very much. So, I got a few questions lined up for you. I thought I'd do sort of ask the question to each person in order. So, starting with you, Mohammed. How did what sort of support did you have from your father when you were growing up?
The support from my father mainly was based on getting the resources, for example, teachers to help me learn Braille, and because I was an international student as well from Saudi Arabia originally, looking for the best or the most suitable schools for me as a totally blind student, and also looking at how I can develop uh, my independence as well as um, a blind child in terms of learning, um, for example, how to use public transport and so forth.
Great, thank you very much. And Sean, could you speak to the same, the experience of support in your family?
Yeah. So my dad was rubbish. um, I don't think it was necessarily his fault. I grew up in a very isolated part of South Wales. I didn't have any real support from my dad other than to provide a roof over my head and put food on the table. He didn't see his role as supporting my disability. I think he saw himself as a childcare provider in the terms of financially and leaving the rest up to other people. So my mum and the school, I suppose you would say when I got to that age. So right from the beginning, I got the sense that he was somebody who was quite hands off. He worked long hours, and as I got older, I realised that he wasn't interested in anything I was interested in, and we didn't share any interests at all, really, and that persisted right the way up until I left to go to college. And so we don't really have a close relationship, unfortunately.
Thanks for that, Sean. Mohammed, back to you. We're just wondering what were the important lessons that your dad did teach you, in specifically to do with your VI. What were the important lessons that you got over that he taught you?
Well, to the most important lesson that I learned is, I know this might sound a bit cliche, but never let blindness stop you. So I was always encouraged by my dad and generally family, dad and mom, siblings, to try things, even if I make mistakes. So I'd say that he let me make mistakes, and that's a process of learning. I think that's really the most important lesson that I learned.
Great, thank you very much. And over to you, Sean. What were the sort of lessons that you would have preferred to have been taught by your dad that maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankful in some ways for the hands-off approach because it meant I was free to grow and develop on my own. I guess I'm lucky that I was quite a confident person. I was lucky in that I had a very good schooling system and good support from friends and teachers. But it would have been nice if we had found something in common to do. It would have been nice to know him as a person. And I think my one regret, really, I don't care that he didn't have much money or that he couldn't find a sort of sensitive side and we couldn't bond, as much as I'd like to have bonded. But what I do regret is not having that one thing as father and son. It would have been nice to have something that we did together that was just us, and that's something that I think I sort of missed out on really. But apart from that, being left alone was probably the kindest thing he could have done for me to let me find my own way in the world and be independent.
Were there any lessons that you got taught from elsewhere? Was there anything that sticks out to you as things that really helped
Yeah,
you?
I mean, realistically speaking, I was the only blind person in the area. I didn't meet other blind people until I was sort of in my teens, and so it wasn't seen as anything out of the ordinary. It was just something that everybody had to put up with. You know, there were people in my school who had learning difficulties. There was a young lady with a hearing impairment that was in the next school over, and it wasn't looked at like a big thing to address. It was just part of who we were, and that is quite a nice thing in some ways. I mean, it didn't help in terms of resourcing, but it helped in terms of
Sean,
being used.
Sean, could I ask if did you get support from organisations like RNIB?
I got support from the local school sensory service, so the council run sensory service, and I guess they would have gotten resources from people like RNIB and library resources and things, but there wasn't much early on at all of that. No.
If anybody else has any questions, do just jump in. So I think next we'll jump over to the rest of the members of the panel. If you could just give us a short introduction, tell us about your kids and things like that. So can we start with Nick? You're on mute.
Yeah, I'm Nick. Nick there as well, and my daughter Maria. Hold tight. She is 30 years old. She probably won't like me saying that. But yeah, she's been visually impaired since birth. She still has some useful vision, but she is registered as blind. And she is making her way through the world amazingly well at this present time.
Right, thank you, Nick. And the same question to you, Clyde, if you could.
Okay, hi, I'm Clyde Starrett. My daughter is called Rachel Starrett, and she's 28 years old, and she's a pianist, which requires me to support her generally for performances that she attends up and down the country and in different countries as well. She's been to Barcelona and she's been to Japan. And yeah, so she's been blind from birth, totally blind. She had retinopathy of prematurity because she was very, very premature at birth. And the thing about that was she was so small, it wasn't so much the blindness that was the problem in the early years. It was her health in general, because she was very fragile. She was in hospital with pneumonia probably twice a year for the first 3-4 years, and tube fed for a couple of years and all that sort of thing. So it was quite tough. And then the blindness came along after that. So the blindness, in some ways, was the secondary issue, because it was about getting her healthy to begin with, and then it almost seemed like, well, blindness isn't so bad after what she's been through. To be honest, it was a strange one. It was a very intense few years at the start, and but at the end of the day, it was quite good because she got to focus on playing music, which was great focus to have, and it's something that an interest that she's been able to expand and develop. So it's been good.
Lovely, thanks very much. And over to you, George, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little introduction.
Sure. No, happy to. Thanks. Yeah, no, my name's George Holroyd. I'm father to Theo Holroyd. Theo is 16. He's blind. He's been blind from birth. Can see light and dark, but that's about it. And he has retinitis pigmentosa. He's also on the autistic spectrum. He's in a mainstream school, and yeah, I mean, I'm happy to obviously talk as we go through the session, but that's us.
Sure. Sean, you gave us a thumbs up there. Did you want to say anything?
Well, just it's interesting about a couple of points really. The mainstream school thing is interesting. It's very interesting to see the divide about mainstream versus specialist. That comes up a lot, and maybe we'll be talking about that later. Also, I was thumbsing up earlier about the retinopathy of prematurity, because I was also born very premature. In fact, my mum did not know she was pregnant, and we think I should have been born sometime in April, and I was out at the beginning of December. So I'm lucky to be here, really. And I know that when I was born, the choice was brain or eyes. They obviously chose to oxygenate my brain, which I'm very grateful for. But it was the eyes that suffered. So yeah, it's really interesting how that's a recurring theme. And I was a small baby. I'm quite a small guy. Hopefully, I stay small well into my 80s and don't put on loads of weight. That would be quite nice. But we'll see.
Okay, thanks for that, Sean. Okay, we've got a bunch of questions to ask each of our panel members, and I think we'll just start going straight through them. Again, if anybody has any questions, anybody wants to jump in, please do. So we'll start with Nick. We're just wondering about the initial thoughts and feelings that you had when your child was diagnosed with the visual impairment. So what were sort of the first things that you felt when you found that out?
I think after the initial bombshell of it being of us being told, I felt at first very numb about it. Didn't know what to do, didn't know quite how to handle it. I think it goes back to that thing of being a dad and being wanting to be practical in finding the things that could be done about it. You know, asking doctors more practical questions than perhaps medical the sort of questions as to why it couldn't be resolved, all that sort of stuff. And I think just being quite wallowing, I think, in my own negative emotion about it at first.
Thank you, Nick. And yeah, Clyde, same question to you. We're looking for sort of the initial thoughts and feelings, what was going through your head when, when your daughter was diagnosed.
As I mentioned, Rachel, a bit like Sean mentioned, the health thing was a big thing when Rachel was born prematurely. The eyes was always a risk, and I think when it came, it wasn't such a bombshell because I think by the time it was diagnosed, we had become aware ourselves that there was something slightly wrong with her eyesight. But as I say, there were so many health issues at the time that it sort of didn't seem so bad in many respects. We did have lots of appointments with consultants about her eyesight, and there was nothing that could be done, which was obviously disappointing. But I think we'd come through so many other problems that we were almost, we had no more emotion, if you like, to put into it. It was just what it was, and we had to get on with it at that point. So that's about it, really.
And George, over to you. We're looking for the sort of initial impact on diagnosis of yourself.
Yeah, no, I remember being. I mean, we knew for Theo. Obviously, it's interesting. It's really interesting hearing other people because it's we all have our own stories. It's all different for all of us. For us, we knew there was something different about Theo's eyes from a very early age. From sort of month 2 probably. Because babies don't use their eyes exactly all the same, but within a couple of months we were going to the GP saying, this is different, he's not focusing, he's not following. And the GP put us, we saw the consultant and they said, oh, it's probably nothing, don't worry. And then I think we went back a few weeks later and they said, oh, well, we'll do some tests, but don't worry. And then we got the results of the test when Theo was 6 months old, and I was totally in denial. I was, the doctors have said don't worry, so I'm not going to worry, And my wife was the opposite. She was like, well, there's clearly a very severe issue here that's not going to go away. So I remember the diagnosis incredibly well, and we have been going back to see the same consultant for the last 16 years. So you get that sort of memory hit every time you go back to the same place. And I think it's the only time I've ever walked out on a doctor's appointment because I was holding Theo on my shoulder. He was only 6 months old, and she said that they'd done these tests and he was blind, and I just could not take it in. So I left. I walked out, and my wife stayed there to ask all these practical questions about. So what do we do? How does this work? And I was out in the corridor just thinking, oh my God, what is the and it's funny now, having, being Theo's dad for 16 years, Theo was the first blind person I ever met. I just knew nothing about anything. So I was really, really shocked. And I remember we came home, and I was working in London in the Cabinet Office at that time. And I remember sitting on the sofa, and so I was very involved in sort of politics and briefings for ministers. And it was actually the day that Gordon Brown became Prime Minister, which actually had a impact on my kind of day-to-day work, because I was doing briefings and was in and out of Number 10 and the Cabinet Office. And I remember sitting on the sofa watching Gordon Brown being taken in a car to Buckingham Palace to become Prime Minister, and just thinking, I just in a total daze. So I was very, very shocked. But that's probably speaks more to me being in denial for the months beforehand. But and I would say, if you don't mind me rabbiting on, I remember a week or two later, we thought, how do we tell all our friends and family? Obviously our closest family would knew by then, but our kind of wider friendship group, how do you tell your friends? They obviously knew that my wife was pregnant, and it was, and we didn't really know what to do. And then we found this poem called Going to Holland. And if you Google Going to Holland poem, it's the first link that comes up. And it's a story about, it's not actually a poem, I don't think. It's a story about somebody who thinks they're going to Italy, and then find out at the last minute, actually, they're going to Holland. And they work out that Holland's not that bad. Holland's quite good, actually. Holland's quite nice. And you're just in a different paradigm. You're in a different world from the world you thought you were going into. When the plane takes off, you think you're going one place, and then you end up going another. So that's how we tried to explain it to our friends and family. And at the time, it seemed very appropriate. That was really how we were feeling. But then it's interesting revisiting it. I remember rereading that poem a few years ago, thinking that actually it's totally wrong. That actually we ended up in Italy and everyone else is going to Holland, because you end up in this crazy world, and everyone else is going to the kind of safe, normal, standard world. So there, that's our little story.
Lovely, thanks very much. So I'm going to jump back to you, Nick. I just wondered if you could speak to the sort of adjustments that you had to make being the father of a visually impaired child. Obviously, everybody has to make changes. What were some of the changes that you had to make?
Well, I think funny enough, we noticed Maria had problems with her eyes pretty early on, when she just for no reason would bump into things and us. And looking back on it now, we used to give her a row because we told her that she wasn't looking where she was going, but obviously she couldn't see where she was going, so it was kind of a bit odd. But yeah, she making adjustments. It was just things, doing more for her in the beginning that our other child would do naturally, she couldn't do. And just putting things in front of her rather than just generally on a table somewhere, so she could see it. I think going outside was a particular hazard. Just thinking, if she took a step somewhere, had she seen this? Had she not seen it? Just all those types of things, making sure, panicking a little bit, that when we went somewhere new or somewhere different or to someone else's house that didn't have a visually impaired child, was there hazards that perhaps we didn't have in our house. All sorts of things like that. It's really a complete shift in thinking. I think as the last speaker said, you think you're going somewhere, and then you find out that you're going somewhere different. It's just a completely different world. So yeah, it was difficult at first, but you kind of go with it and learn as you go along in some ways.
And on a personal level, did you have to make adjustments there? Were any big changes that happened to your life post Maria being diagnosed?
Personally, I think I was much more aware, I think, about people with visual impairments than I ever was before. I knew that people had this, but it's not until you're actually in it that you begin to realize just how difficult it is and how strange it is at first. That's probably the wrong word, but it's a sudden halt to what you anticipated.
Thank you, Nick. And Clyde, over to you. Same question. Looking for adjustments that you had to make to your life and in your own personal life as well.
Right. I suppose when Rachel came along, we already had a son who was 2 years old, 2 years older. So life probably changed a lot whenever Alex, our first child, was born. And when Rachel came along, as Nick said, there were a lot of changes in terms of hazards and making sure things weren't causing problems in that respect. I do remember a couple of incidents with Rachel where, when she was a little bit older, she heard the ice cream van outside, and she literally opened the front door and went running out and in the direction of the ice cream van that she could hear, and she literally went straight over a wall that was at the extremity of our by the garage. Basically, she dropped about three feet over a wall. I mean, it was just ridiculous, but that was just running after the ice cream van. So yeah, there were hazards to watch out for. There were things that it was quite intensive support in terms of you had to do everything for her, and you had to continue as she was growing up. And it's probably more recently that, in terms of trying to work towards independence, you're trying to think, well, setting things up in the kitchen that she can do herself, she's got access to the microwave, she's got a 1 cup that she uses where she can make her own cup of coffee. So all those little adjustments that my wife prepares her clothes sets in the wardrobe so that she can dress herself and she knows where everything is in that respect. So it's quite hard work to do all that and get it all organized. And it's a gradual process to get to that sort of stage. Rachel has, I haven't mentioned already, but she has Asperger's syndrome as well. And in some ways, it's the Asperger's that makes things harder as well. Going off on a bit of a tangent, I suppose, but her managing of priorities and things that she does can be all over the place sometimes, and she does the most illogical things when you least expect. So that can be a bit of an issue as well. But yeah, it's just I think going back to what I said at the first, I think life changed as soon as Alex was born, and he was only 2 years older. Life changed a lot. And then when Rachel came along, it was even harder, but we were already embroiled in a very intensive sort of, we're looking after a couple of very young kids, and it was just really busy. So we just got on with it, I suppose.
And anything that was sort of personal to you that you had to make adjustments for?
I don't think so. I think we was just head down and just get on with it, really. It was quite a tough few years when the kids were young, the two of them. But I think it's been really good for Rachel to have an older brother, because Alex did make life tough for her in many ways. He's a very good brother to her, but it was a normal sort of brother-sister relationship, and he just gave her a really hard time, and I think she's benefited from that quite a lot.
Great, thank you very much, Clyde. And over to you, George. The same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, for us, Theo's our only child. So it was. I think it's for any parent, for any new child, it's your first child. It's the biggest sort of change to your life, probably, or maybe it's up there, isn't it? So no, for us, I mean, massive adjustments. But a lot of that is just being a parent. I think being a parent to a blind child, I think, it does come with a lot, and it's going to be different for every parent, and different for all of us, depending on the level of vision, depending on your own personal circumstances, and everything else. So But yeah, huge adjustments. I mean, everything, life changes totally. I mean, for the better, it's fantastic, but yeah, massive changes. I suppose initially we felt under quite a lot of pressure, in sort of that we put on ourselves, I think, to try and help our baby as best we could. So, you go to the VI service, who I think, well, certainly where I live near Cambridge nowadays, they don't have anyone that helps you with a very young child. But in those days, they did have somebody who would come out once a week or once a fortnight, and sort of play music and stuff with your young baby. And I mean, my wife was anyway not going. She was going to take maternity leave, so she was not working, but she actually ended up not going back to work, which for her was a massive adjustment to get used to. But yeah, the changes are massive. I mean, I think you end up, and maybe we'll talk more about this later. You end up trying to seek out sort of knowledge, because you feel that you don't really know how to help your child, which is a sort of strange feeling. Like, obviously you do on some level, but on another level you don't. What do they need? How is it going to work? How is my baby going to learn how to crawl? How is he going to learn how to walk? Because so much of that is visual, so much of that is copying other children. So how do we teach? I remember one of the people we saw, there's this thing of object permanence. How do you teach a baby that when they stop feeling the cup, that the cup is still there? Just very sort of normal concepts that children will just soak up if they can see, but if they can't see, they don't always. And so which of these will our child sort of pick up naturally? Which of them do we actually have to try and teach? And then who can tell us how to do that? We had lots and lots of questions around that. So yeah.
Thank you. Could I just jump to Mohammed and Sean? I just wondered if you had any thoughts on what we've spoken about so far, if there's anything that's particularly resonated with you from what we've been talking about. We start with Mohammed, maybe.
I think, as people talking in the chat as well, is to get to try and get the right support in the beginning at an early stage, as soon as possible. I know that might not be always possible because of where people might live, but I think that is a critical step to the child's development in terms of their learning and even gaining independence as part of their development, or as they grow.
Thank you very much. And Sean, did you want to add anything at all?
It's interesting to me, of course, because we had the opposite question when my wife was pregnant. We wondered what would happen if our child was or wasn't blind, and if she was blind, who better to bring her up than two blind people? So although my condition isn't genetic and not heritable, hers is, and the right combination of genetics could have led to a blind child. It didn't happen. And my first thought was, oh gosh, that's going to cost more electric to light up the house. But it turned out to be, that she was sighted, and that was a whole host of things. I think it's interesting as well that the way so many of the things that you've gone through are not blindness things, they're parent things with a slightly blind twist to them. And I do wonder if sometimes services and provision can sort of sometimes gloss over the fact that they are just children. I was lucky, possibly scandalously lucky now, to realise that I had the freedom to go out at a very young age and be on the streets and have to learn those things myself. If taught properly, of course, then that's a good thing, but there were risks as well, so I can see why you wouldn't want that to happen to your children. But yeah, I do think sometimes we over worry. Of course we do, we're parents, but then the professionals get involved and it can be quite difficult then to separate the disability from the child in some cases.
Thank you, Sean. So we wanted to talk a bit about the fears that you had about your kids' futures, and maybe your coping mechanisms that you came up with, or just how you manage those feelings, basically. If we could start with you, Nick. So yeah, just if you could talk to the fears that you had about Maria's future.
I think initially, I think like any parent, you see this perfect little bundle in the maternity ward, and you have aspirations of what she might do, or what what might happen in the future, where she might go to, and all these different things that I think every parent has, and to then be confronted with a diagnosis of a visual impairment kind of blows that all away, or it did as far as I was concerned. And it's I think, as we said, it's difficult to get your head around it. You don't know what to do. You're all over the place, but because you just your world has been completely turned upside down. It's just very, very difficult to understand, to know what to sort of do, what direction to sort of go going. As a new parent, it's difficult enough when your child hasn't got a condition of some kind, but when they have, it's just 10 times worse.
Thanks, Nick. Hopefully this is helpful to sort of new dads that are in the chat right now. And Clyde, could I ask the question to you as well? We'll talk about the fears that you had about your child's future and how you sort of coped with it.
Okay, it's mainly around the more current, really. It's the independent living in the future. I mean, Rachel's 28 now, and it is so difficult. She gets support from the National Autistic Society, and they are very good at trying to develop some of the day-to-day, the normal living skills that she'll need to be able to cope in the outside world. And Rachel has improved considerably in the past months, like last couple of years probably, but to actually see her living independently in her own home and going about doing a normal day-to-day business like everybody else, it's so hard to see that happening. It really is very difficult. She's so focused on her music that everything else sort of peels into insignificance. It's almost like that. It's only through working with the National Autistic Society that, and this isn't so much a blindness thing, this is more on the Asperger's side, that I say her management of her life is more of an issue than being blind. And we know plenty of blind people who can live perfectly independent lives and are very successful people and do wonderfully well. But I think with Rachel, with this complication with the Asperger's, it just makes things very, very difficult. Although, as I say, I can see that things have improved a lot. But things like finance, understanding money and her position and what she needs to pay for and managing her bills and everything, be very difficult. Even having a guide dog would be virtually impossible if she was living on her own. I sort of wonder whether the guide dog would be fed and taken out for walks. It's that sort of level, she'd just forget it because she'd be I'm too busy.
Well, mine used to refuse unless I fed him. If I didn't feed him, he wouldn't go to work. So maybe she needs a very assertive guide dog, because he would not go unless he had his breakfast. He would literally refuse to go to work.
All right, there. Oh, that's good then. So yeah, it's from my point of view, it's the future. It's independence living, and how can we get there? Unfortunately, at the moment, with the National Autistic Society and with care in general, I think the support hours, Rachel's contracted a number of hours per week, and we don't even get anywhere near that number of hours at the moment because there aren't enough people support to provide that support that she's actually contracted to have. So that's a separate issue. If she was getting more hours, then that would be a lot better, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Clyde. George, we're going to jump over to you. Same question, but we've also had another question about the emotional recovery from receiving the diagnosis.
Sure.
So if you could speak to that as well, if possible, wrapped into your answer, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think the emotional recovery is a real thing. I mean, I was it's hard. Theo's 16 now, so but I can still remember it very, very clearly, and it's just time. I couldn't really put a sort of number of months or years on it, but it does take time, and I think you have to. There is, I mean, it sounds ridiculous to me now because I so much enjoy being a father to Theo. But at the time, there is a kind of grieving process. It's not grieving for your child. It's grieving for the kind of hopes and dreams and thoughts that you may have had for the months, when you're waiting for birth, and then it's just, yeah, and it's just so different, and your reality is so utterly different. But that's a shock. It's a massive shock. It takes a long while to get over. And I guess it'll be different for everybody, depending what your expectations were before the birth, and the support you have around you, and your child's condition, and so I think it's hard to put a time on it. But it'll depend a lot on the support you get, I suspect, and your sort of pre-existing sort of hopes and dreams and stuff. But about the uncertainty, I mean, I think in what I've learned, well, one of the things I've learned an awful lot being a father to Theo. A lot of, I mean, all of it positive, I have to say. I think one of the things I've learned is to embrace the uncertainty a bit, because you have less control, you have less certainty. It's the path you're traveling, or your child is traveling with your support is new. It's much less well trodden. It's much more unexplored. Nobody knows where it's going to go, and you don't know, and they don't know, and the as smart as the doctors are, and whoever else, the consultants, the VI service, they don't know. So, and a lot of it's up to you and your child, and there is that level of uncertainty. I mean, there's always uncertainty with a child, but it's much more, I think, with a blind or VI child. And then the other thing I would say is to not look too far ahead. You're working day to day, month to month. The next thing, the next hurdle. And to be frank, when your child is young, I remember being so tired, and you're working really very hard. Because Theo was actually a very active child, so when he starts walking and he can't see a darn thing, but he's racing around. We had to be within 1 foot of him at all time, from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed. That's exhausting. So in a way, he stopped us from looking too far ahead. But even now, I mean, you're working really hard, you're doing your best, and it's really hard to know. So don't waste. I try not to waste time thinking, where will we be in 3 years? I have no idea. So don't think about it too much, but just do your best on a day-to-day basis.
Amazing.
Can I chime in briefly on grief? Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think a large part of the reason my dad and my family generally didn't do much with me as a blind child was grief. I think they felt like they'd produced this broken thing, and they didn't have the education or the spoons, I suppose we might say nowadays, the stamina to cope with that. And when my brothers came along, my younger brothers, they were both planned and sighted, and so they almost treated me and saw me, I think, as a sort of a first trial run and a failure. But they couldn't let go of that, and that's the biggest problem, I think. Looking back now, I can sort of feel a bit more pity for it and a bit more sympathy. I almost got sent away to an institution because my mum was told I'd be a vegetable and I wouldn't be able to think, and I would need to be locked up in a padded room for 23 hours a day. And it's only by a very lucky chat with a local primary school teacher that I got into mainstream school, where I thrived. But I do think if I peel back all the years of being ignored and not having any access to support from home, what it comes down to is the fear and the grief that they produce something that they couldn't cope with. And of course, if you spend your time in that mindset, then you don't want to be doing anything with the thing you've broken, the thing you've got wrong. And I think even when I left to go to college, they were more glad to be rid of their mistake than glad for me. I mean, that still hurts, I do think a lot of it is predicated on fear. Also, I met Theo briefly. I met him the first occasion I met Theo. It was very interesting to me how confident he was just to get out there and do stuff. He's the sort just Sorry, that's the dog jingling in the background. He's the sort just to get out his cane and go like a rocket. And I knew the place we were at very well, being that I've worked there for years and years, and I had to struggle to keep up with him. You know, he was just zooming along. And we see every September at the school, we get a new intake of young people, and it's night and day. Some of them will literally stand motionless and not move, you know, until they're told where to go, and others will range and explore. And it's that I wish there was a switch that I could flip in people's heads to help with that confidence, because it does make things so much better. And again, maybe it's fear as a blind person of what you're going to come into contact with. Fear is a very powerful and scary thing, and fear and grief and sadness are quite difficult to deal with.
Thanks, Sean. It's good to have your sort of opinions. Go on, Nick.
That's what I was going to say. What Sean has just said, that that feeling of creating something that is broken has been with me for most of my daughter's life, and it's a difficult one because it's so you just feel so guilty, or I did anyway, about it, about having that feeling, but also at the same time thinking, how has this happened? Why has it happened? But also, rather than, you know, what Sean was saying about that maybe his parents were maybe glad to see him off their hands, as it were. I was more intent on trying to find a reason why, and a reason to perhaps give me hope in terms of what could be done about it.
Thanks.
So I definitely relate to that.
Thank you. Clyde and Mohammed, did you want to jump in and say anything about that before we move on?
No.
Okay, no problem. Okay, we'll go on to the next question. We'll go back to you, Nick. So where did you find support to help remain positive and have a positive outlook going forward?
Do you know what? I think it was definitely my wife. I think who was the more she's probably the more emotionally stable one, I think, out of all of us, because she's very kind of good at finding out information about what to do and how we can make changes here and there. It was almost like a job for her. She was focused on it, you know, completely. Whereas me, I was sort of too involved in some respects in my own fears and guilt about it. Whereas, you know, she became like a support resource for me in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Nick. And Clyde, was it a similar situation for you, or did you find support elsewhere?
I think the big thing for us was when Rachel went to school in Pencode. So she went to the infant school and then the secondary school there, and they were both. Pencode was a resource base for VI children, and there were a couple, maybe 2 or 3 different times, and they were fantastic there. They developed all the materials for Rachel to have access, you know, the Braille materials she needed. And they were just fantastic people there who helped nurture her and develop her in many ways. The music side came on, and yeah, so they were really good. So she stayed there until her O levels, and then she went to Hereford College to do her A levels, to try and give her a bit of independence living and stuff like that. And probably that wasn't the best experience that she had in her life. I think she was there for 2 years. And I can remember talking to a couple of teachers at the end of that period, which was quite a tough period, and they felt they'd let Rachel down a bit purely because they hadn't had the resources that they needed to be able to look after the number of children that they had there. And I can remember turning up at Hereford to collect Rachel, to take her down to the Royal Welsh College music on a Saturday, and she was in wet clothes and stuff like that. it was a bit of a shambles, to be honest. So that wasn't such a good experience, but we've had lots of very positive input from, say, from the schools, and also from the groups like UCAN in Cardiff, which are a VI group which develop kids, help develop confidence in drama. They do drama and they do music. So it's a very positive experience for kids there. And Rachel was a member of that group from a very young age. So there have been a lot of positive influences, particularly school, but not so much Hereford College. It was a bit of a. There were some great people there. Don't get me wrong. There were some lovely people there, but overall, I think they had too much on their plate. And Rachel, I remember also you'd go there, and Rachel would have her clothes inside out. She'd have her clothes on inside out, and it was just that was one of the most depressing things you could see as a father, was your child, leaving the college to get in your car and their clothes are on inside out.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a specialist school, it's that was quite sad to see. But,
Okay, thank you, Clyde. And George, could you talk about your support network? What did that look like for you? You're on mute just now. There you go.
No, there we go. The question was, I think, was it about staying positive?
It was your support network. Like, where did you reach out to find support, or where did support come to you from?
I mean, there's friends and family, of course, but I think it's harder when your child is more sort of particular, because and your wife knows what your child needs and what they respond to, and they're very much more kind of idiosyncratic. Every child is different, but blind children are even more different. So it is harder. I mean, I don't think there's any getting away from it as a parent. It is just harder. It's also, I think, more rewarding, I should say, actually. But I think it's also harder, because when you go and meet your friends and stuff, your child is different, and they need different care, and you're the one providing it. And you end up embracing that, to be honest, actually. And actually, that's I many times you meet up with friends, or if other children come around, and I would be the dad, in the sandpit with my son, or next to him on the treasure hunt, or on the bouncy castle, or that would be me. And the other parents are off having a drink or something, and I'd be literally in the sandpit or on the bouncy, or whatever it is. And I think to start with, it's sort of, I don't know, but after a while, actually, I remember after a few years, I was thinking, God, those poor parents, they have to talk to each other. I get to be with all the kids, this is great. Who wants to talk to all the old people? It's so much more interesting with a bunch of 5-year-olds hearing about, this, that, or the other. And especially when they're younger, they don't mind having an adult around. That's fine. I think when Theo was really young, we were really looking for kind of knowledge about, how to support him, how best to support him. And there are places to go, but and it'll be different for everybody. At the Great Ormond Street, they have a developmental vision clinic, and you can actually get referred there by your GP, and they were very good, because we thought, okay, if anyone's going to know anything, like the sort of academic kind of because everyone has theories and everyone has ideas, but what's actually based on research? What's actually, what should you be trying to help your child to do next? Once they've worked out that the cup will still be there when they touch it, how do they work out how to walk, how to crawl, how to sit up, how to eat, how do you help them teach? So when they're very young, that's hard. And we got some very good support from the Developmental Vision Clinic at Great Ormond Street. And they had some books, and they had some, I don't know, a manual, but they had some sort of, it's a great big kind of filing system, like 4 folders with the different steps, the sort of pathways your child and how a blind child might develop over the years, and that you can sort of see the steps. And for us, that was very helpful, and they were very kind of understanding. And actually, they continued all the way up Theo's education until probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they will write reports about your child, which is very helpful when you're going to EHCP meetings, because Great Ormond Street say your child needs X, then it's hard for people in the school or the county council to say no, they don't need X, because
yeah.
So, but sorry, just last thing on. I thought it was going to be about staying positive, and the thing that made me stay the most positive was our son, was Theo, because he was always positive. I mean, he still is. But if I ever felt glum or which I did sometimes, he has a real thirst for life and was not going to let anything stop him. And then you think, well, why am I feeling a bit sad for myself when he's not? So actually, if there was one person that kept me positive, it was him.
Lovely, thank you. You sort of touched on my next question there. So
Oh, sorry.
I'll throw it back to you again. We're just wondering about lessons that you learned from your child. So you've just said about one there. Is there anything else that you learned from your child?
Yeah, I think I learned to be more patient, because things will take the time they will take, and lots of things you can't rush, even if you want to. You don't have that control. It's not something. I think I learned a huge amount from Theo. I've learned. Well, I hope my wife agrees. I think I've learned to be more kind. Because, yeah, like I said before, I'd never met a blind person before. I don't think I'd ever had a disabled friend before, just growing up as a person in a mainstream school. And then, yeah, you're pitched into this other world, and it's there's so many fantastic people we've met through Theo, with Theo, thanks to Theo. So patience, kindness, I think a different perspective. You do see the world in a different way. I certainly do. I think I've learned to embrace uncertainty much more. And if you have fixed ideas about what your child may or may not do, or the path they may or may not take, actually you realize that it's not really up to you and your dreams or your thoughts. It's up to them and what they want to do. And then I think another thing is creativity. I mean, when Theo was very young, we used to play all sorts of stupid games, because lots of standard games just don't work for him. Obviously, TVs and iPads and stuff don't work, and so you end up we made up all sorts of silly games we play on a Saturday, Sunday morning, in his bedroom on the floor. I don't want to repeat them, but one of them was called Stinky Toilet Game. We played that for years and years, and it evolved into all sorts of different things, and we had a lot of fun, really a lot of fun. And so, yeah, I wouldn't have expected anything like that. So, and I learned a huge amount. Still am.
It's good to hear some positives about the situation. Clyde, same to you. I'm just wondering if Rachel taught you any lessons over the years.
I think I concur with those previous remarks, really, about positivity, because Rachel is a very, very positive person, and I think nothing stands in her way, and she just believes in herself. And to be honest, all the disabled kids in general, and particularly VI kids, the amazing positivity I've always seen in groups that I've attended with these kids are fantastic kids. So it is humbling in a way that there's no reason why people cannot get on and do things if these kids can set such a great example to people in general. I think that's the main positive for me.
Amazing. Thank you, Clyde. And Nick, same to you.
Again, I concur with everything that's been said previously. But for me, I suppose as well, is with Maria, she's got an amazing sense of humor. She always keeps me laughing, and her ability, I think, to just try anything, and she will literally try anything, which has always amazed me. When she was younger, she did horse riding, which scared the hell out of me every time I saw her on a horse. It really did. But it was really, really inspiring in a lot of ways to see her doing all these different things. And she didn't seem to have a care in the world that she was visually impaired. It was really, really a really good but frightening to watch.
Thank you very much. Nick, we'll go to you again. So we're looking for like the proud moments, or moments where you're really proud of Maria, and in particular moments maybe that you didn't expect, or that are specific to VI children. What really has made you proud over the years, aside from sort of the general?
I think the proudest thing I would say is just her huge level of independence that she has now. I didn't expect that at all. She lives with her partner independently. She takes care of everything. And I think just that unexpected level of independence has really made me the proudest, I think.
George?
Sorry, struggling with the mute button. I'm probably a bit embarrassing because I'm really, really proud of Theo on a kind of daily basis, which is, yeah, probably a bit over the top, but I really am. And that's, if I'm trying to pick out individual things, there was one moment when I think he must have been about 11 or 12. And Theo, like I said, he's totally blind on the autistic spectrum. He also had speech issues, still does, really. When he gets excited or when he's very nervous or something, or excited, he'll talk very fast, and he didn't really talk at all until he was 3, and he had a lot of speech therapy. So when he wanted to enter the poetry contest at school, I was a little bit nervous, because public speaking is maybe not his. He's got a fantastic memory and he's very bright and stuff, but and he had to get from his seat to the podium, turn around, put his cane down, speak, aim his words at the audience, finish, speak slowly, pick up his cane, find his way back to his seat on his own. And I was, and to see him do that with, I don't know, 150, 100 parents watching, all his classmates watching, and for him to do that and to speak well and to speak slowly and to do it independently, and yet he got second prize for what it's worth. But that was an extraordinary moment, just to sit there, and I wasn't with him. He did it. That was quite something. I think we went skiing a few years ago, and he had a one-to-one ski instructor, and it was quite funny at the top of one of the lifts when he just skied off, and she you can't say a blind, can't say a darn thing, and she was totally terrified, and then they spent the next sort of hour practicing emergency stops when she would give him a code word and he would then fall over, and that was because she was so worried that he was going to ski off again. In a funny way, I was quite proud of him because he's just not going to let it stop him, even though it's highly dangerous. But I was still very proud of him.
Lovely, thank you. And Clyde, obviously, Rachel has a lot of achievements in music, but is there anything in particular that stuck out to you the most over the years?
Yeah, I think in general, it's the impact when you take Rachel somewhere and she plays. It's the impact on people that you see that stands out for me. She blows people away, and the effect is generally people end up in tears. It's unbelievable, but she makes people really happy, I think, and it's overwhelming sometimes when you least expect it. There was a guy when we were at Bristol Southmead Hospital today, and Rachel was playing just in the atrium with people walking past. There were a couple sat and they listened to a large part of what Rachel was playing, and it turned out that this chap was waiting to go in for an operation. And when Rachel finished her session, he came up and he wanted to say how grateful he was to Rachel and how she had lifted his spirits. He was waiting for an important operation, and he could hardly get his words out. He was in streams of tears, trying to explain how much he enjoyed Rachel's playing. It was just, but that happens quite a lot, and you don't always expect it because you're used to Rachel playing, but other people, I think, quite often are just blown away with it. And I think it's the innocence of Rachel and everything. She's 28, but she looks about 15 or 16 type of thing, and she's just sort of, I don't know. It's the effect she has. She is like a happiness drug, I think, as much as anything. She's very, very bizarre. But yeah, very proud of Rachel, obviously. But like everybody, like other parents.
Thanks for that, Clyde. Mohammed, I wondered if we could get your input on sort of what we've spoken about so far, if you had anything to add.
About sorry, there was quite a lot in the
Yeah, sorry. So, um, we're talking about sort of um, moments of being proud and things. Have you done things that you felt happy that you made your dad proud with, or anything like that?
um I think a moment that resonated with me was when I was in year nine, and I was well, there was two things, but the first one was when I received like certificates. I was nominated to receive awards in front of like a lot of kids and parents, and I think that made all of the family like proud because you know it's I would say impressive, but especially in math, a subject that blind people can struggle with. I think that is a key moment, really. And the second was when I went to a school camp and we did this trip and did this zip wire and canoeing and all that stuff. I found that really. I thought that they were proud of that as well. To try, that was the stepping stone really to starting my independence at that time.
Lovely, thank you. And Sean, did you want to discuss anything that we've been speaking about so far?
Yeah, I just wanted to it's really nice, to see all these different things about the things that your children have done for you and that's made you proud. Um, my daughter now spends 4 nights a week dancing, which is probably the most least useful thing she could do for blind parents because we can't really watch any of that. She did a cookery course for a couple of years, and that was really helpful. I didn't have to feed her on Saturdays. That was quite nice for a while. And the thing that we've done, I think, one of the things that we've had to do as blind parents, I would say, probably our only serious limitation as a blind couple is spontaneity. I'd love just to get home from work on a Friday, chuck some sleeping bags in the back of the car, and go somewhere, and that's not possible when you can't drive. And so one of the things we've done is to get some money from the local council. We get direct payments, and that is money we can use to employ some sighted help for a few hours a week. Or a couple of hours on a Saturday to be a pair of eyes and get us to those places or do those visual things with our daughter that we would miss out on. And I doubt very much whether she appreciates the difficulty of hiring someone to be your eyes at this stage in her life. For me, I was a fiercely independent young adult. I had no choice from where I grew up. I'd think nothing at the age of 8 or 9 of just going on a train somewhere, and so to have to sort of bend my proud neck and say, yeah, we need some help here, that was a big thing. I mean, it took a lot out of me to agree to it. But now we manage that, and we've got currently we've got two people that we employ on an ad hoc basis to come and do things with us, and it's just really helpful, and it gives us that extra level of confidence to be out in the communities that we don't know with our daughter. It's fine around your local area, we go to the park and the shops and everything, but it's those further afield things where having someone who is able to see what's going on was certainly more useful when she was younger, and that surprisingly took a lot out of us because it was a change to the way we wanted to parent, so that was interesting as well.
Thank you, Sean. So Jane is going to jump in with some additional questions that we've had in the chat and things like that very shortly. But just before we do, I'm just wondering if we could get any practical advice or practical tips that you've sort of come up with over the years, or things that have really helped you that might help other people that are listening right now. If I could just throw that question to you, Nick, first.
Yeah, I just think don't be so keen to wrap them up in cotton wool. Let them be a little bit independent. Let them do things that they want to do. As difficult as it may be for you, I think it provides them more independence and gets them to engage more. I think the more you let them do, the more they tend to engage with you and with other people.
Thank you. Clyde, any practical advice for people listening?
I think with Rachel, we were keen to give her as many opportunities as possible in different fields. Like we did have her go into a little sports club for a while, and she really enjoyed that. And not to try and put your own ideas on the child as such, try to let them develop their own interests and what they want to do, and go with the flow really sometimes, which might mean you go outside your comfort zone at times, but just try and open up as many avenues as possible for the child to make their own decisions on things as well. Not always easy, but that's about it.
And George, any practical advice you could give?
Yeah, I think so, but I also hesitate slightly because I think it's all so different for all of us, and all our kids are so different. So it's I can try, but it may or may not be relevant. I do remember being told when Thea was young how you know your child best, and I think all parents are told this, actually, not just parents of VI. And I always thought, oh yeah, where you go to the doctor and they say, but you know your child best, and you think, well, come on, I haven't spent 10 years in medical school, so actually on this you probably know better than me. But the longer it's I've been a parent, the more I think actually you do, actually you really do. And I transfer this over when you get into discussions with so-called professionals in inverted commas, you do know better than they do. I mean, it's very good, it's essential to seek out the best people you can find to help you support your child. But actually, they should start from where you are and where your child is, and actually, that starting place much better than they do. And they may come with preconceptions about you or about your child or whatever. Everyone comes with preconceptions to everything. But it's like kind of hold your ground. Actually, better. Actually, you really do what your child needs or wants. And it took me a while to really believe that, to really kind of internalize that. And then when you get into discussions, especially with the school, about what your child does or doesn't need, and again, so-called professionals say, oh, they need this or they don't need that. Actually, make it your business if you can, if you have the time and the capacity to work out what you think your child needs. Talk to whoever you can, and then make sure, to the extent you can, that your child gets it. And we've had lots of times when the local people have said, oh no, your child doesn't need this or doesn't need that, or whatever else. And a load of nonsense. He did. And if you stick to your guns enough and get the right support and the right help, then there's a good chance that your child will end up getting it. So yeah, I would really, probably, if a single piece of advice, it's to sort of try and know your mind and then stick to it, because a lot of people have a lot of different motivations when they're interacting with you and your child, and lots of them are good. But they also have their own, they have constraints, they have budget constraints, they have this, they have that, and you're pretty much the only person who is there purely for the benefit of your child. And your child best, and you should really, to the extent you can, follow through. So if that doesn't sound too preachy, I have one or two other sort of smaller ones. I think I read once when Thea was young how, and I think that we haven't talked about the social side, but it is a bit lonely for Theo being, the only blind child in the school. That is tough. It's harder, and he has many fewer friends than most kids do, and so you have, I think, what we've said, you try and set clear boundaries for or we do anyway, for our child, but you also want to sort of half be a friend, and that's a slightly different, I think, from other parents, because Theo does have fewer friends, and so you are both sort of doing the fun sort of slight friend things with him, although he does have friends, but you're straddling in a way to two sides there, I think, a bit, or we have been anyway, a bit. I don't want to overdo it, but I think there's an element of that, because it can be lonely for the child, especially if they're the only child, that in our case is blind. Sorry, I've got a couple more. One more. Build a team of people who you think really do get your child and do understand your child and can help your child. And it takes a lot of time. It does for us, especially if you move house or something. But the right music teacher, or the right riding teacher, or PE teacher, or whatever whatever your interest your child has, and don't be afraid to move, because actually getting the right teacher is absolute gold dust. And So for building that team, and I think you're the only person who can build the team for your child, or whatever interest it is. And don't be afraid to look out for people, to take advice, do proactively search, don't always just take the first person you get. And in our case, that also includes a clinical psychologist. Theo's really benefited from clinical psychology, basically seeing a psychiatrist. There are charities out there. There's a fantastic charity. It's got a bit of a weird name, I have to say, called Fight Against Blindness, FAB. But I think they have clinical psychologists in 5 or 6, or I'm not sure exactly, places around England for VI and blind children. It's very hard to get in, but if you can get your child into one of those, it's really, really beneficial, because they also go through a lot, being so different and so alone in some ways, so they can really benefit from that support.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you all for being so open and honest with all your answers here. Jane, can I pass back over to you for any additional questions we've had in the chat, and anybody else who would like to ask a question? Now would be a good time.
Yeah, I've been trying to make sure, and I think you have covered some of it, but Thomas asked, how have people struck the balance between wanting to help your child all the time and ensuring they're as independent as possible? Because I think our main instinct is to keep our children safe. For those of you who've not been to a Look event before, I am a mum of a child who's registered severely sight impaired and profoundly deaf. So it's really hard, but can you guys share your advice? We talked about it a little bit, but yeah, that balance between wanting to keep them safe and then also teaching them independence, which is what they'll need for their futures.
In my case with Rachel, so she went to Hereford for 2 years, and that was a certain amount of independent living and skills that she developed there. And when she came back to Cardiff, she went to college then at the Royal Welsh College, and we hadn't really considered how that she would live in the college accommodation, if you like. And but what happened was, in her first year, she got the opportunity to go to Barcelona for 6 months to study. And she came home one day from college and said that she wanted to take up this particular placement. And I was like, well, how's that going to work? That's just absolutely impossible. But we did actually make it work. We got support from, I don't know if you know a guy called Andy Fisher. He does a lot with mobility for blind kids in South Wales, but he ended up going over with his wife who does mobility as well. They worked with Rachel for a few weeks in Barcelona on mobility, where she stayed at digs in Barcelona and traveled back and forth to college. And we got a group of people as well. We employed a group of people in Barcelona to basically take Rachel back and forward to college in Barcelona every day. So that sort of worked out great. She was there for 7 months. She came back, and then we realized, right, if she can do it in Barcelona, she can do it in Cardiff. So we got her into digs at college in Cardiff from that point. So she spent the rest of the time in digs at Cardiff, being supported by a group of people who basically, all they had to do was get her from the digs to the college and bring her back again. Because once she was in college, we did a lot of work with her, learning routes around the college. And but what we realized was that we thought she couldn't do any of this at all from the outset. But actually, if you actually push her a little bit, she can do a lot more than you actually realize. So that was a big learning point for us, that there's really no limit, I don't think, to how much she can do. But sometimes it's making the time available to make these things happen. That's the problem. And you get comfortable doing certain things in certain ways. And a bit lazy, I suppose. Life is so busy, isn't it, that you don't always make the time to do these things. But to actually get Rachel studying in Cardiff, staying in digs in Cardiff University, and going back and forward to college every day, like a normal sort of student, was one of the biggest achievements we've had, probably, because you never thought it could have happened, but it did.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel got thoughts about that balance?
Yeah, I think as far as
Nick?
yeah, as far as we were concerned, I think Maria had quite a difficult school time when she was younger, but we made a decision at 16 for Maria to go to a residential college down in Exeter, which again terrified me. The thought of her staying there in Diggs just was beyond anything I'd ever thought at that time. And she stayed there for 5 years, learnt more or less her whole independence down there. And she got a job in retail down there, had her own place down there eventually, which I still makes me think, how on earth did that happen? And now look where she is now. I never thought she'd be able to be as independent as she is now. But I think just by her own bloody mindedness, I think, to be honest, that she doesn't let things get in her way, and she just cracks on, and I think all credit to her for that.
Thank you. Brilliant. Sean, you politely raised your hand.
I wanted to raise a point that maybe had been harder for you guys to consider because you might not have seen this. When I have been out with someone sighted in a support role or a companion role, the reaction to me as a blind person has been very different from the public to when I've been on my own. And I just think that's an interesting point. Like, if someone can see you're being supported, either directly or even observed covertly, then people step back and don't interfere. And I've found that people talk to me far more when I'm on my own than when I'm either directly with or being shadowed or observed by a sighted person who they think is in charge of me. We've all had the experience, I'm sure, of being out with our children or whatever, and because they can't see, we get talked to as the the sighted. My daughter still gets asked things in place of me, even though I'm the adult, but she's the sighted one. But it was very interesting to me to consider the way in which people react differently to me when I'm on my own, and I think obviously that's something you can't really see much of without letting your children go out into the world. So I just wanted to raise that point, really, that it does happen. People are different when they can't, and you aren't there. And although the world can be a very dangerous and scary place, the vast majority of my time in the public eye has been nothing but supportive and friendly.
Thank you, Sean. Mohammed, I wondered, sorry, I lost yeah, and then I'll come to you, George, promise. Mohammed, I was wondering, because I know you've got kind of advice for the dads as well about kind of, the things that you want to say, but how did you feel that you found your independence? And also, what about socializing? How have you found kind of making friends and things?
So with independence, in terms of my independence, like learning,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So with the independence, I went to Hereford RNC, and that's where I've been there for a year, and that's where I picked up those skills, and with the additional support of because the year after I moved to Manchester to study a foundation year, and with the support of the mobility or sensory support service, the council, I learned some of the routes, but I'd say I agree with what everyone has said before, is try to get the children to do things on their own. Obviously, there is a balance between letting them do it and like by themselves, and in order not to for them to be hurt, and also as a parent role. But I think it's better to let them experience doing things by themselves, rather than them being sort of like a shell, so to speak.
We can't wrap our children in cotton wool, even though sometimes it's our instincts. Thank you, Mohammed.
No worries.
George.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's and really really important. And I also think it's one that the VI services, in our experience for us, but also with our friends that we have who have blind children, are in our experience, and I'm sure it might be true, it might be different elsewhere, but they don't really promote independence because for children, because I think independence takes more work. That's sort of, to do it properly and safely, it takes more work. So you need more and better and more consistent mobility instruction for your child, so that when they are going off on their own, you feel confident, they feel confident, and that they come back without incident. And it's hard to get that mobility training. There's different amounts of it in different places. I know in some regions there literally are no mobility instructors, so it's a really really hard thing. It's absolutely very very important to push for. But I think if you don't push for it, the default in our experience is that your child will not be taught these skills. And some children probably will find it out for themselves, but quite a few will not, without a bit of help, without training, without consistent support. So to the extent parents can, to push for really good quality, consistent mobility training, I think is really, really important. And the other part of it, I think, is actually in school. In fact, lots of mobility training only takes place in school. Often for school-aged children, they refuse to do it outside of school. So one thing is to push for your child to get it outside of school as well as inside school. But even inside school, I think blind children are very often sight guided around the school, especially if it's a bigger school. So, to the extent they can have really good training and then feel confident to be walking by themselves, because I totally agree with what Sean said. But the same is true inside schools, because children will not come up to your child if they have an adult attached to them. They're much more likely to talk to your child if they're in the queue for a cookie at break time if the child's on their own. So it goes to part of the social thing as well. And the last thing I would say on this, which I'm afraid also takes more work, is in lessons, the better prepared the resources are for your child, the more they can work independently in the lessons. So, if things are organized properly, if the Braille resources are in the right place, or the large print or whatever it is, and your child has a system, they can get it, they can go to the locker, they can manage it by themselves, they can be much more independent in the school. But if it's a bit of a last minute environment and things haven't been done, and then you need a TA to sit there and read out to them what's on the board or whatever, then they're not working independently in school. So it's sort of pressing for that in the schools, because it takes more work. It's harder for the support team to really prioritize independence. And so in our experience, you have to push for it.
Thank you very much. Well, it's 4 minutes to 9. So we've done really well. What brilliant, wide-ranging conversation. Before we go, I don't know if anyone wants to share anything else. Just pause a minute. Thank you all for your time. Panel members, do you mind just staying when everyone's left so we can kind of wrap up as well and say thank you? But I really appreciate you all coming. I hope it's been helpful to have this space just for you guys. And we will share resources afterwards in the background. Joe has been kind of making notes. We we've just introduced to help our funding and to shape the sessions we've done, you might, I'm hoping it will work, when you end the call, you might get a little survey pop up, but it shouldn't take you very long. But I did say that I would warn you. So if you do take time to do it, it will just help us plan future sessions and make sure we're in the right direction and help our funding. I hope you all have a good evening. Thank you for coming, and yeah. See you all soon. You're all very welcome to our other events as well. It's definitely, parent support group is not just a mum space.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.